All right. I still got one more thing I need to do, guys. I apologize about this. I always underestimate how long it takes me to set everything up, like, you know, cameras and mics and all that stuff. But I got one thing left, and it's just to sharpen my spindle gouge. Just want to make sure I have a perfectly good final touch on this before I get going. Not going to change cameras. I'm not going to move anything. I figure this is mostly fairly straightforward and probably a little boring, so I don't really feel a need to show it, but I figure I might as well just, you know, go live and start my intro of talking about what's going on while I'm actually working on this. So you're going to hear some stuff in the background. I hope the rain noise isn't intolerable either. As far as I can tell, it's somewhat loud, but I think my voice still carries over it, so if you turn the volume down, if it becomes obnoxious, you should still be able to hear me and still be able to hear the machines if you're into that sort of thing once it gets going. So right now I am just filling up water for my sharpener system, and I'm going to put a new finish on. Did I say bowl gouge earlier? I mean spindle gouge, of course. This is spindle turning. Today I am making a black pawn. Basically, from what you already see on the camera, of a somewhat rounded blank that I took the liberty to go ahead and mount. I changed my blank from last time. I did this a week ago as well, and I didn't quite get as far as I wanted to. It's not the most interesting video, so I recommend not watching that one. We're going to watch this one. If you got a choice between two VODs, watch this one instead, because it's going to be better. I hope the audio quality won't ruin that notion, but this will be much better. We're going to get a lot further. My plan today is to go from where you see the plank right now. I'm going to part off the ladder part of it, so the portion that'll be on the left side of the screen near the tailstock. As far as I need to go, and just move that aside to be used as a different pawn later. And we're going to use that middle part where you kind of see the divots already cut into it to create a pawn, similar to what we did in the stream last week. But this time I'm actually going to get to where I need to go, which is to shape the entirety of it, to sand it down, clean up the sanding with denatured alcohol, also known as methylated spirits, I believe, in Europe. And then I'm going to apply a beeswax-based polish called Yorkshire Grit, which is hard to find here in the States, but worth it if you can get a hold of it. We'll clean that off after polishing it down all the way. That'll give the right color and glow that I'm looking for, hypothetically, while at the same time, you know, keeping a nice natural shine to it as well. And then the final thing will be applying a single coat of polyacrylic by brush. And we'll let that sit for about 3 hours before I put the next one on. I might even just do it tomorrow. I'm not sure if I'll be back here. But anyway, that's the plan. Assuming we don't run into any snags. Last time I spent a whole lot of time fiddling with a steady rest, like a whole lot of time. Wasted a whole bunch of time with that, and this time I think I'm just going with my tried and true method. And we're just going to load a new blank every time we get to the point of turning one down. So I suppose what I mean by that is, I swear I'm actually still working on this. I'll be there momentarily. I just need to double check my settings on my jig here to sharpen my spindle gouge. So the last time I tried turning a very large spindle, a very long one, and the idea was to minimize waste. I'm not going to continually remount it. I was just going to take it one at a time, one off the end. And I think that is possibly a better option to use for a much more expensive material. If I were using something like actual ebony for my black pieces, or if I didn't have such a ready supply of white holly, I would probably consider it then. But in this particular case, I actually have a lot of black walnut, and I'm able to acquire it fairly easily. So it sort of becomes a level of min-maxing that is not time efficient, even if it is materially efficient. A lot of words that basically say that I'm going to go with the slightly more wasteful but faster approach to maximize my productivity over time rather than productivity per dollar, if that makes sense. So, just put this final coat of finish on my chisel. I've already sharpened my parting tool. I'm only going to be using two things for this entirety of this process, two tools that is. And those are the spindle gouge that is currently in my hand and the parting tool that you've seen probably very often before and is visible on the camera right now. It's just a diamond parting tool, fairly standard beginner version of the straight parting tool to cut things off and to make vertical incisions in the wood. Spindle gouge, which is this other one over here, I'm now bringing over, is this piece, which I will be using to create the majority of the curvature of the piece. These two tools will get me through everything I need to do today. In the future, when I go to actually part this off, I will bring out a third tool, which is my smaller parting tool. It's a very thin, very small amount of wood taken off, and I usually just use that to try and tighten up the base as best I can to make it straighter. So, grab my dust mask. How am I doing on intro time? I think I'm trying to figure out a way, so I ramble on a whole lot, and I'm trying to figure out a way to bring this stuff down to less than 10 minutes, and I think I might finally have it this time. But, just gotta get my equipment, face shield, dust mask, the cloths are over here, all of the chemicals I will need later are already over here. I'm gonna grab one of these pawns. Actually, you know what, I'll grab both of them for reference to show what I did last week and what we're trying to accomplish today. And the final thing that I need is my phone to be able to read chat while I'm going. And I don't know where that went off to, but if anyone is here and listening to the rain, please let me know if the volume is tolerable or not. It's something I'm going to have to look at the VOD for going forward, but it's really hard to tell how hard something is raining from inside. This is like a fairly cheap garage building with a metal roof. So if there's just even a little pitter-patter outside, it makes a huge amount of noise in here, which sucks. Trying to get through it and just assume that it will be not picked up as much by the higher quality microphones I've got, and we'll get it going just fine so that I can still talk without it becoming an unbearable noise. If that's not the case, I'd like to know so that I can stop wasting my and your time, and we can do this some other time for those of you that are interested. However, without any comments, I'm going to assume that it's good. We're going to get started. So, here are the two pawns. This is the new one, this is the old one. Now, the immediate thing that stands out to me is the color. And that's why I changed blanks. This one is part of a tree that I assume is the same tree as this piece, and this piece is a different one, would be my assumption. This also may have some sapwood inclusion, particularly on this bright spot over here, but you can't always tell. There's a lot of color variation inside individual wood pieces themselves. The long and short of it is I prefer this color, and I think this will get me closer to this color, my older color, than the new one is. There's also a possibility that this will just age with time, with exposure to light and the air, to where it will change more of this color, but I'm not counting on that as the possibility. Other things is this is a bit big. I didn't turn it down quite as far as I probably should have at the base, but otherwise I actually much prefer the shape of this piece. So I'm trying to replicate the shape of the one in my right hand, your left, I think. Yeah, it doesn't matter. This piece right over here, I'm trying to replicate the shape of this one with the size of this one in this section that is already kind of tuned out on the edges here. So, everything's sharp, everything's all set. I'll move my tools off to the side, and we will go straight away into, let me double check this once again. We will go straight away into parting this off after putting a little divot in this corner here. I want to basically go ahead and start off making this next piece able to detach and go right in here exactly the way that this one is currently mounted without having to use centers. When I'm done with the piece that I'm currently working on, I'm ready to move the next one in. So we're going to turn down a little tiny portion of it, and then we're going to chop away right where that mark already is, where it's already been parted to some degree. And then we'll remove this entirely, move the tailstock in, and get to work on the piece. Should only take a couple of minutes to do this. I seem to have sat my helmet, my face mask, down on a bunch of sawdust, so now it's going to be all over my face and hair and in my vision for some of the time, but what can you do? Just going to go through customary checks here. We'll move this over since this is the area we're working on. Make sure this is tightened down. Make sure there's a significant amount of pressure from the tailstock. Everything's good over here. If the audio has any problems because of the microphone with the face mask and the helmet, please let me know. My spindle is unlocked. It turns freely. The last thing I will check, making sure this has sufficient tightness. Even though it's basically being held between centers right now, it won't be shortly. So, do that. Flip the switch on, stand clear, and we'll bring it up to speed. Looks a little high. Bring it back to a nice 950 here. Take the parting tool, and we're just gonna go ahead and round this out. Now, how far do we want this to go? Should have looked at this first, honestly, but this will be all right. We want to go here. Grab my pencil that I left far away from the machine. You know what? Let me set up my screen over here real quick also, just so that I can see if something goes terribly awry. Now, is it crooked? It looks crooked on my larger monitor, but I can't tell. There's a decent amount of like skew, so let me just adjust the camera real quick and we'll... Once again, I'm still very new to any of this AV stuff when it comes to streaming, so I apologize if my professionalism in this particular format is a little bit lacking. I'm not really a video creator or anything like that, and I'm not a leading personality that's particularly good at presenting either. Trying to work on that, but all right, how's that? Is that better or is that worse? That looks better to me. I think the main thing I need to tell myself is that it always takes longer to set up than I think it will. So I should just get out here like early and plan to start every stream like an hour earlier. So we'll just do our normal trick here. This is not round at all, but that'll be a good enough mark for me. You can even see where I haven't even peeled the surface yet because it was so out of round at this point. But We'll go like this. Bring it back up to where we were, about 950. And then I'm going to actually go back here. Remember, this is the section we're actually completely parting away. So the only risk we have at this portion of the piece is that we weaken it by going too far. So that's not really a serious concern. We are well far away from where it might snap off. I'm going to take a look at calipers, because this part we can go too far. If we turn this down, oh, big thunder there. If we turn this down too far, what we will get ourselves is a piece that will not be held by these jaws. Too big and it won't hold it properly, it won't give it enough strength. Too small and it won't be able to close on them at all, and it will give it no strength. So this one is about 27. That was good enough for me. This one's probably actually a bit more, so what we'll do is we'll just kind of take this slow each time, make a couple passes. Does not need to be terribly accurate. Something like that is probably good enough. Yep, so that's just a little bit smaller than the other one was. I'm totally okay with that. To clear the rest of it, I'm actually going to swap to the spindle gouge. Now, to be totally honest with you, I'm okay with the fact that this tapers a little bit outward as you're moving back. I think that's fine. That just means that if it does come loose a little bit, for some reason, it'll probably get stuck, almost like a dovetail, further wedged in the jaws. So now, we've got this part down to the size we want. We're gonna look at this once again, just to make sure that we're gonna give ourselves enough length. Yep, looks good to me. If anything, that might have been a little bit too much, but that's not a problem. It's just an extra millimeter of lost material. Not a big deal. I have lots of this stuff. Okay, that's fine. I lied earlier. I'm actually going to use 3 tools. My third tool is just a way to simplify parting this away in a safe manner, because it'll still be attached to the tailstock here and won't have a whole lot of strength. I'm just going to use this Japanese pull saw in as straight of an angle as I can reasonably manage, one-handed, as I rotate the spindle myself. And there we go. See how this piece is spinning now and the other one's not? That means that it's free. Put this saw away. Unlock the tailstock, pull it back, remove this. This will be our next plank. As I've said already, we'll just mount right in there exactly like this one is, and our next pawn will be right here. Some other time. Now, move our tool rest over. It's already the right size piece. Unlock this portion of the tailstock chassis. Move this in. Lock the chassis, wheel it in just a little bit. Now, you see, actually, I probably could have gotten away with not having the extra piece up here. I may not even need the tailstock at all, to be honest, at this point, because it's so well supported and it's already round that I should have no problems whatsoever. But you can never really go wrong with more support and more holding. The only thing you'd really lose by that is time. And I suppose like the 5 millimeters of material I need to dispose of because the tailstock will bite into it, but that's not really that big of a deal. What we'll do now, this is the size of the base that we need. As you can see, it's too big. So we know that the portion up here will be smaller in diameter than the portion at the base. So what I'll try to do is I'll pick some spot right here. We will turn this down until we get to 29.55 millimeters, the approximate size of the base of our piece. And we will scoot that down after we get it set up right. Every time I choose to move the tailstock away or back or to a new position, I always like to double check that the chuck is in there solid. After we get to 29.55, somewhere up here, we'll just scoot that same level down, and that'll be our base, and then we'll start carving out the bottom. Or sorry, the top. Always start slow. Just moved everything again. Bring it back up to speed. You can see there's a tiny bit of a wobble in the tailstock, and that's probably a result of just a small decentering error. So we'll go right here. Turn this round again. And I don't honestly know how far away I am from this size, but not much. So see, this is exactly where we want to be, and that's why we did it up here first, is because if I'd gone down here, I'd basically be so close to having an unusable, unworkable piece now. So right here, we want this height to basically be where our base is. And for that, I'm going to want a little bit more precision. So I'm going to tuck this up just a hair. Like that. It's not straight at all. It's a little better. Now this doesn't actually need to be straight. It's just useful as a reference for it to be straight. because that means that I can keep the same distance of protrusion past the tool rest. With my tool to get the same level, if that makes sense. If the tool rest is the right distance away from the center point, or the same distance away from the center point at all points on the tool rest, then when the tool moves a certain number of millimeters away from the tool rest and moves in a straight horizontal line, that means I'll create a dowel. That's the objective. But check this. I think this will be good. Oh, no, it's still a bit big. This is where my precision matters a lot, though. You know what? I'm actually going to take my watch off. This is making me nervous. I can tell already it's not good enough. Nope, still no. Need to fight the urge to become impatient here. I can chunk this down a lot faster, I think, but doesn't hurt anybody to go one or two more passes beforehand. How are we doing on battery? All right, still above half. My suspicion was correct, by the way. My battery charging pack was charging the camera to 100% and then quitting. So basically what I was doing was turning the camera on, starting the stream, hooking the battery pack up to it, and it would go from like 98% to 100% in just a matter of seconds, and then the charger would just stop working because it would turn itself off. Kind of weird, but I guess I get it. Probably an overcharge protection mechanism, and it only resets, so to speak, when something gets plugged in. So the way I have been doing it that has worked somewhat well so far is to, yeah, that looks better. We're getting a lot closer to what the size that was desirable. What I have been doing is wait for the battery to run down to about 50%, plug it in, then bring it back up to 100 because it does charge faster than it drains. I have figured that out. And that seemed to have worked for my extra long rock climbing stream that I did last time. Probably about 5 days ago or so now. All right, so what we'll do here is I'll take my drawing, my blueprint. I'll find the center of the bead at the top, the head of the pawn, I suppose, if you will. 45.46 millimeters. I'm going to double check with the shape that I made the other day that I liked. Yep, seems right about that on. Take this, mark where that bead will be. We'll bring this down, do it automatically here. Just make a careful mark here. And we're going to repeat sort of the same tactic we used earlier. We're going to use a parting tool. Well, actually, first we're going to find what kind of size do we want here. So our diameters, we want about 16.8-ish. It's okay if it's a little above that. We're going to go for this target, 16.8, but pretty much right in the center where the narrowest point will be. So if you compare it to the finished piece, right where I have that turn down in the cove there, we're going to bring that down a long way. This cove here. Again, to reiterate the purpose of this strategy is so that if I do go too far, I will have lost nothing, because I know that this section will end up being significantly thinner than the bead. I think I'm explaining that in a way that makes sense. I hope so. All right, that's almost right on. So we will use that as our new guide. We'll go straight to work here. So this would be like a Staunton style piece right here, where you give him a little collar like that. But we're not making Staunton pieces, so get rid of the collar. So a lot of this particular part right here is not about getting the mathematically perfect shape. I mostly do the things like beads and coves largely freehand. I just take general measurement points of the peaks and valleys, kind of like we've been doing, where I find, in this case with the pawn, there's like 3 critical areas: base, the valley, and then the bead. And then more or less I just turn the rest of it by hand for a variety of reasons, but one of them is to improve my skills. I think that makes sense. My freehand skills need work, always, so I see nothing wrong with, doing some practice with it along the way. The other reason, and probably more important, is that you could spend hours and hours and hours constantly turning this on and off, checking depth over and over and over and over again, and getting a perfect replica. But it would take you weeks to finish one piece. I'd rather not do that. So, let's go ahead and chop off the point at the end here. Make sure we get the right height of the full piece. .52.5. Double check that that's consistent with pieces we've already made. It's a bit low. I'll actually measure straight from one of the already made pieces, 54.8. Now I'll check this with my master copy on the page and see if that's... So that's too tall, but that might be the size of pawns now going forward. I would rather have them homogeneous than right in this case, which is probably not the best training philosophy. Again, it sort of goes against what I was just saying, is that I want them to be perfect, because if I were practicing, it would be ideal for me to have them more closely match my target, not each other. But I guess I'll rationalize that and get around it by saying that this is now my target, not the page. So we're making copies. I just went through all that effort and then I didn't even check. Where is 54.85? Okay, so right at that line. That's actually perfect. I don't need to touch anything. So, what's up, Half Blind Woodwork? How's it going? So, we will go back to this. I'm trying to make sure that I don't lose my reference of where I want the center of this bead to be while I whittle this away. I'm going to go ahead and make assumption based on your name that you're here for the woodworking. That's probably how you found it. Are you a wood turner by chance? Also, you'll have to excuse the audio. I'm sorry, that's the rain on the metal roof. I wish there was something I could do about it, but I am afraid that there's very little. We'll jump back to here, measuring this piece again, because this is the size I want, remember? 16.8. Wow, why is that so much less than before? That's not even close to what we had measured before. Must have messed that up the first time. Anyway, we're going to need to make this Basically the new size then. Alrighty, double check. That's not far off. We'll take that for now. Jump back to here. Seems a bit big, doesn't it? Wonder if my mind's playing tricks on me. Oh, that's the right height. I guess it's just this big knob in the center here. We'll match this up pretty much directly. Go for right there is the valley. Do it like that. All right, not the smoothest touch today. We'll get there slowly and surely. Go nice and easy here. I feel like his neck looks a little long. It's kind of close to this one. And this guy, yeah, this guy has a much sturdier, stouter neck. We can still generate that appearance by going a little bit further here. Try to smooth this out while we're at it. I'm just not accurate at all today. I think my tool rest might be a little too low. Let's see if this is any better. Tool rest is definitely too high now. I don't know, guys. This doesn't feel like a super responsive day. Guess it's not too bad. I'm giving myself too hard of a time here. It's still the shape I want. Might take a little bit more sanding, that's all. Yeah, I mean, that's still a decent shape. We'll just go back a little bit. Seems acceptable so far. Let me check battery power once again. All right, we're about an hour in. I'm going to change my charger over from my phone. Plug in the camera. Cutting smooth. I'm actually going to take a quick moment to go to the bathroom here, and I'll be right back. Undo my mask and stuff, and I'll be back in probably 5 minutes. Alrighty. I think we're far enough along. We've done pretty much all of the baseline stuff that I was hoping to accomplish. So far, what we'll do is we'll get rid of this guy, chop this off, and finish the top. And we're pretty much like just minutes away from sanding, I think, based on what I can tell. But just double check measurements, put the copy up there once or twice and look at it again. I'm hoping everybody can hear me. Again, apologies about the audio, anybody who's annoyed. I can't do anything about it, I'm sorry. Other than change days. Unfortunately, in the spring here, there's lots of rain, so it just kind of comes with the territory. This piece was for the head, I believe. So we actually have a bit to go here, but I'm going to wait until I take this off to really get that down. I'm just going to double check the height of the piece. One more time here. Yep, 54.75. So right at where that bead is, or that, whatever you call that notch, I suppose. We'll just go ahead and use the parting tool. And I got to be super careful here because I don't want to chop that way. So straightened up. Now I've learned a lesson here from when I did this piece in particular. At the top you'll see there's a little hole right there, and that was from this part, near the end at this part of the process. When I parted this off, there was still a little section on the end of it here, and it snapped. And it took out a little bit of the wood grain with it. I guess it's probably partly because it's walnut and it does that, right? There's like, it splits easy. So, what we'll do is we'll do this the safe way. I didn't even have my tailstock locked. Didn't need it, I guess. We'll move this off to the side. And I could just part all of that away, but I'll speed things up a little bit. And we'll just get rid of this little notch here. Figure that'll be quicker. Now we're going to jump back to the spindle gouge. As always, double check the tightness of this now that we no longer have the tailstock support. It's just fine. And we will bring things up slowly. Again, just standard, overly safe procedure on this. It looks like it might wobble a tiny little bit there in the center, but I can't tell if that's just the discoloration in the wood. Either way, we're now totally fine going all the way up to 1,000, which is good. I find at this stage, this is the way I get the best results. Just over and over and over again, taking very small passes. Basically using this like a bowl gouge. But my bowl gouge is a lot bigger, and I've already got this one out. So this gets the job done most of the time. Now it's okay if it comes to a little bit of a sharp point there. We can always bring that down with sandpaper very, very easily and very quickly. The idea is more about the spherical shape at the top here. So we're a bit high, and that's fine. Just going to do a bunch more passes, bring it down to, guess where that crown sort of is. I know we've measured this out like 100 times already, but you know, I just always, especially at this stage, want to be more safe than sorry. Because a good amount of effort has already been put in that would be wasted if I turn it down just too far. I think that's reasonable. Still have a fairly sharp tool, which I'm a little bit surprised about. Do one more check here. Comparison. Looks like about the right height. Want to just smooth this over just the tiniest bit. Got to be super careful with this part. That didn't feel super careful, to be honest. Well, not my best work, I'll be honest, guys. Not my proudest bead here. There's still some hope, because this part can go down a little bit more. I don't think it looks bad. It's just a lot closer to this one than it is to my later one. I'm not super happy about that one, so I don't know. I feel like something's wrong with my tool rest, but I don't quite know what it is. Like, too far away, too high, too low, something is wacky. I think I'm too far away. I don't know how that's fixable. I think this is where we start to sand. Just want to make sure we've got one more thing here. All right, so my small piece is 12. What do we got with 12? We can go a little bit further. I'm gonna do something potentially unwise, push it just a little bit further here. Bro, this is just getting worse every pass. Last week, everything was going super smooth with the actual cutting. I don't know what I'm doing so different. Guess it's good I've got it on a VOD. I can actually look. But man, it's still all right. I mean, I'm still gonna finish this up. It's totally usable. I'm just, wrists are not cooperating with me. Just got absolutely no flow. But we're also still just too tall. And that's just weird. Oop, that was almost bad. Don't do that. Pulled that back just in the nick of time. I just totally screwed up my roundness too. You know what we're gonna do? Look at that scratch right there. We're gonna go straight to sanding. Because that scratch, can't afford another one of those. That scratch is already going to take some work to get out. But I don't know. I think this is still salvageable. I'm not happy with it so far. Like, not at all, guys. Probably going to end up deleting this VOD. It's almost that bad. Alright, so I'm going to start working through grits here. If I can read the numbers on the back of this. I'm going to start with 180. And I'll turn it down a bit. This is fairly aggressive as far as turning sandpapers go. I have 120s, but I think this will be sufficient to get the big gouges out of it. Of course I say that, but it's kind of looking like no. Almost. Must have caught that one pretty good. There it is. Generally, you don't want to sand this much. The fact that I have to sand this much is sort of an indictment on my spindle gouge skills, at least for this week. Last week I did a pretty good job, if I say so myself. This week is just, this is abysmal. And you have bad days, I guess, but this is something else. And that scratch in there. Yeah, we got to do more here. Pretty much rounding this over with sandpaper because I was unable to do it with the spindle gouge. If it works, it works. Turn this way down now, not on out of the center of the rotation. At this point, it feels like I sanded the piece into the right shape from a blank. All right, let's take a look. There's still a little bit of a gouge there. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get that, to be honest. We will instead try and clean up these radial lines. There's a few of them. Not too bad though. Now we get denatured alcohol. And this is just to clean it. This cleans off the excess that I just sanded, and it'll stand up the grain a little bit, so that the next coat or next pass of sanding will get some of the stuff that was hiding below surface level. But it dries super duper fast. The whole point of it is that it evaporates very, very quickly, so it'll grab all of my dust and debris, and you can already see on the highest points it's going away. So now I take the 180, move that off to the side, and go with my next one up, which is 240. Before I put another coat of a finish on here, I'm going to wait for this stuff to dry out. I don't see that's necessary for sanding, but man, that gouge that I put in right at the very end, that irritates me because I could still see that, and it's probably not going to go away. That probably wrecked the entire thing. Just a moment's lapse of attention, and that's what I get. I should have called this done like 20 minutes ago, the carving portion, and moved on to sanding. I guess the only reason I really didn't was because I know I've done a better job in the past. So I wasn't willing to like give up so fast, but I don't know. Sometimes you gotta know when you're beaten. This would have been one of those cases. Got a fly on my leg now too. Just wasn't already in a bad mood. So generally speaking, when sanding, the first pass is what you need to spend the most time on, because it's what really, completes the shape, in my case, of a subpar turner. And even in just general sanding on like flat surfaces, it's what removes the most material. So really all future passes of sandpaper, more or less, are getting rid of the scratches that the first pass of sandpaper introduced. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just going with the grain and opposed to the other direction of my scratches to try and remove those as well. So I don't know, a significant portion of this is just undoing the mistake you made on the previous iteration. Well, not a mistake, but the artifacts that you're creating on the previous iteration. And making a tiny, tiny bit of progress towards the end goal each time. Until you wind up with, well, where you want to be, the very end. So I only do a couple of passes with this. You could start with a lower grit sandpaper. And in my case, since I'm removing so much material, that may have been smart. Probably would have been faster for me. Start with 120 or even 80 before 180. And I'd probably already be past this point because I would have spent less time with the medium grits because it would have removed material faster. But this will end up getting the job done just fine. So that was 240. The next one we do is 320. I'll give it another few seconds for that to evaporate. But I'm going to be honest, the shape of this sucks. Last week when the one turned out much better. I'd be a little more happy with it if I think I knew what I was doing wrong. My guess is it has to do with the tool rest and maybe even the sharpness of my tool. If I had resharpened and my tool rest was in the right position, I need to review all the different cues and, you know, how to know if it's too high or too low. I think I would have been able to do the curves a little better. The actual, you know, the wood of this is turning out okay. Like, confirms what my suspicion was. I think that my other blank was just a lighter piece of wood. I don't think it was aging or, you know, the finish or anything like that. I think I just, you know, literally just had a light piece of walnut. To explain the color difference between this guy and this guy. And I'm happy with that, you know, and the color looks good, but the shape is, meh, leaves a lot to be desired. All right, so this one is basically the final coat, or the final pass of the sandpaper, the 320 there. So we will wipe this off with one last coat, one last application of the alcohol. It's got a very smooth texture to it, which is good. And then we get to the part which is arguably the most satisfying here in this part of the process. At least I think so. This is the product that I have acquired. Guy on YouTube by the name of Mike Walt, W-A-L-D-T, swears by this stuff. So I got some from pretty much the only supplier in the United States. Hasn't disappointed me yet. It's a beeswax based abrasive paste. So there's little grits of like sandpaper that's all dissolved inside this colloid mixture here. And you apply this, make sure it's dry first. Nope, we got a little bit more to go. Then I'll just wipe it off with my hands to not leave any dust from the towel behind. You apply this to it, and then you just using, you know, a disposable paper towel like this, you just kind of apply pressure and work it in as it turns around. and the grits in here will actually break down from a coarser grit to a finer grit as it's used. And it winds up being, well, it's an abrasive paste. It winds up being like a liquid sandpaper, semi-liquid sandpaper, but at the same time giving you a nice wax finish on it. Now, they say, pretty much everybody says, that you can't put anything that's not wax over a wax finish. I have not found that to be the case. I haven't tried a good deal of stuff, but I used Minwax polyacrylic, which is a water-based finish, over top of this. As long as I remove most of the beeswax by polishing it down into the wood very far and then using the same denatured alcohol I've been using to sort of swipe up the rest of it, I have not found any problems with adherence or application. It works just as well on beeswax applied material as my holly pieces that don't use this abrasive paste, for the sake of, not changing the color. So what we'll do is we'll turn this off. Looks dry. I'll just kind of use my hand to swipe off any of the loose fibers I see laying around. And then we just apply this with the paper towel. Pretty much just coat it, cover all the surfaces of it. Doesn't have to be too much. Doesn't have to be too little. This little jar is like 30 bucks or something. It'll go a long way for my purposes. If I were making giant bowls and vases and stuff like that, I might be using it a little bit more quickly, but for chess pieces, specifically only the black chess pieces, I think this will last me for pretty much forever. So I'm not super worried about being overly conservative with the material. Now, move this out of the way so that it's safe. Make sure I keep my hands clear of the chuck. Turn this up. Decent speed, not super fast. It doesn't need to be that fast. And just gradually apply pressure to the piece. Look at that color, though. That color's got to make you happy, though. Like, disappointed with the shape, disappointed with my skill, disappointed with the efficiency and how long it took, but man, I love that color. So this just gets worked in here. Moved around slowly. And when I stop seeing debris coming out onto the cloth, I'll consider it essentially worked into the material as best as I can do it. Like that. There's no material on that portion of it. There is this weird line here. I don't know if that's a sanding mark or probably a gouge mark. Not sure how to get rid of that, but that's the color, right? That's the desired color. It's exactly what we want it to be. Compare last week's piece, much, much lighter. Some of this will probably go away as it, dries out and dehydrates a little bit and ages, but end goal is that it looks closer to this color than to the other one. And I think we'll get that. Hop back over to the denatured alcohol. I've got all this stuff on just another work table. I don't think it's super necessary that it's visible, but Just make sure I apply a new dab to the same cloth I had before. Don't really need to get a new one. We'll just apply this over and over. Keep swiping over and over. And it removes just a tiny bit of what was worked in there on the surface level. And it should give us a good adhesion surface for our next coat of finish, which we are almost done. We got about 5 or 10 minutes left. I'm assuming the stream's even still on. I haven't checked in a while, but all right, yeah, we're still good. I don't always get the greatest indications that something went wrong. Normally it makes like a beep sound, but sometimes I miss that if I'm just not right by the camera when it goes off. So there's been once or twice out here where I've just kept talking, just kept going without having any idea that, oh, everything turned off a while ago. So I'm talking to effectively nobody at all times because there's nobody that's actually watching this. But I was talking to literally nobody when that happened. And I guess for some reason that felt even more awkward. But all right, so that's the application of the alcohol. Again, we'll just make sure we get all the little dusties out. Easy enough to just do that by hand here. Then we'll give this a second to evaporate in the open air as we set up our final portion of finishing this. There's a little bit of a radial mark here. Don't know if it's visible on the camera. Disappointed about that as well, but I don't know, a little bit of lessons learned here, I guess, is I think I'm just being a little bit complacent. Got a little too aggressive with some of the cuts. I think I jumped ahead, maybe in a bad order. Didn't work things down in a appreciable way. Like the objective should be to basically start with a giant version of this, right? And then you just gradually shrink it one little bit at a time until you're left with what you want. And I think I went a little bit too far with some shortcuts, like trying to move this to the right size, move the valley to the right size. I don't know, like there's a little bit, there's a lot to be improved, I think. And I think if I take a different approach in terms of the sequence in which I do all the same steps, I'll probably get better results next time. At least that's what I'm hoping. That's what has worked so far. I mean, again, like this is not the first pawn I've made. I've made many of these before, and this is among the worst results, in my personal opinion, from all of those attempts so far. So, don't know. Gonna grab myself yet another of these blue paper towels. These are great, by the way. They're just available at Walmart. It's nothing special, but they're like higher strength automotive paper towels. They don't tear or flake as easily as the light ones do. They're not microfiber like fancy chemistry Kim wipes, which would be even better. Then I wouldn't have to worry about trying to swipe all the little pieces off, but basically it's a little waxy, but that'll be fine. We got most of it off by swiping. This is just Minwax water-based polyacrylic. It's nothing super fancy, nothing special. Again, you can get this at Walmart if you want. And this is just a paintbrush. Synthetic bristle, you can get those at Walmart too. And this is the last thing I do for these. This is just a hard clear semi-gloss coating. So this is step one of putting this on here. And this will soak in a little bit, and the brush marks will sort of fade a little bit, but not completely. So what ends up happening is you gotta 2 or 3 hours later minimum or more. I usually wait 3 hours. You gotta come back in here and sand it down again, which is why I leave it on the lathe, because it's always faster to sand something radially symmetrical on the lathe than to do it, by hand. Could be done. I could part it off right now and do all of this stuff later and start working on my next piece, which might, even in the long grand scheme of things, be a faster workflow for me, but this has not served me wrong so far in terms of the finish. So I think I'm going to stick with it. You can already see it sort of getting in there on a couple of spots. The idea is we just paint this on to a degree that's acceptable, and we try to go a little bit over, if anything. It's better to do too much than not enough, because in 3 hours time, well, it won't be for me, I'll be sleeping, but the normal process is 3 hours later, I would come back out here, grab 800 grit sandpaper, and tune this down just the smallest bit. Or sorry, 600 first. 600 grit sandpaper, and tune this down just a little bit. And that's going to get rid of most of all of the surface application of this. But that's okay, because it'll get into the cracks and crevices where it needs to be on the first application. And then you apply a second coat. Come back 3 hours later, you grind that down with 800 grit sandpaper, and you apply a third coat, and you come back 3 hours later and you grind that down with 2500 grit or 3000 grit sandpaper. Just the slightest bit, get rid of all the bumps and stuff, and you're left with your final finished piece, which will look like this. Nice semi-gloss finish. It's a hard coating, so it's durable. The wood would be less likely to move. It's really the three things it does for it. One is it gives it a nice specularity. Two is it prevents the wood from absorbing moisture quite as easily, so it'll be more stable over time. And three, it'll give it a hard coating so that any bangs and dings that I would put in it by handling it, which for a chess piece is going to be a lot, gets reduced. So I'll just put this on about 200 revs. And I will wait for this to set in for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll turn this off, because usually by that point it's viscous and moved around enough that it's not a big deal. I close my containers, and that would be it. So I don't know if any of that was helpful, overwhelming, confusing, obnoxious, I don't know. If you do watch these, whether you're in chat now or watching a VOD or anything, by all means, let me know. I am not an expert at this stuff. This is a hobby of mine. So if you do actually understand all the ins and outs of wood turning, I'm totally open to suggestions. Suggestions are welcome and desired. Criticism is welcome. Probably not going to agree with you. If you don't like my styles, that's fine. You can say that. If it's something reasonable, like my workflow could be improved by doing something, I'll probably listen. And in any case, I'll always hear you out. So if you are watching this, let me know what you think. How can I make it better? How can I make the video or the stream better? Any of those things are greatly appreciated information for me. So with that said, I think I'm probably just going to call it here, turn everything off, and I'll head back home in 5 or 10 minutes when this is done spinning for a while. So I will show real quick with it stopped. I'll show basically where we are right now. That's more or less going to be the color that it'll stay, actually. Even after multiple coats and sanding down and stuff, this is the color of the piece. This is what it'll look like. Maybe minus that blue tinge, just because it's still the wet finish. But that's what you get. That's the completion of that process. After all that's done, you just part it off and you wind up with this. Unless anybody's here and has got any specific questions, that's going to be it for me. I usually try to do this every week, about at the same time. I've been trying to start earlier, but it just usually doesn't happen. This time rain was a big reason. So, I don't know. I'll be back next week, probably doing the same thing. We'll make the piece right this time. And we'll get another good copy like what we had last week. So, take it easy, guys. I'll see you later.